Welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us today. I am the Last of Us Strategist. I go by just Strats, and I will be joined by Wolf of Thorns today. And we have a phenomenal Jackson presentation for you guys. Today we're going to be talking all about Jackson. Last month we discussed the Rattlers, and this month we're going to be discussing Jackson, and they're really very different. We knew very little about the Rattlers before we discussed that one, but this one we know quite a bit about Jackson. Actually, in both games, we spend a good amount of time in this wonderful land. And so, just for those who are both watching live and those who are watching in a recording, this first like 45 minutes to an hour will be a presentation component, and then it'll be followed up by the live interactive Q&A. So whether you're watching in the future or watching now, I just wanted to let you know so that we're not responding to you immediately at this time. So yeah, today I'm joined by Wolf of Thorns. He is a content
Good
creator.
morning.
Good morning. YouTuber, Twitch streamer, story teller. But most of all, I think you're a great guy. So thank you so much. It's
Aw,
wonderful to have you back, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's always so much fun to be here with you and the strategist and just talking about all things The Last of Us that we love and brought us all together. I never take that for granted, so it's always special.
I agree. And I just want to say thank you once again for joining me. I really look forward to these live streams so much. It's something I feel that is completely unique in our community right now. A nice place that we can come together and talk about this wonderful story in a very healthy and open manner.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, very powerful.
Um, and I'll put your card up. You guys can catch Wolf of Thorns on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I believe you have a Patreon as well, so be sure to check him out. There'll be some links in the description that you can find him on. And yeah, and with that having been said, let's talk a little bit about future streams and projects and stuff. I know you've been streaming a lot lately. What do you got going on with your Twitch streams?
Yeah, typically stream every day, though right now I'm in kind of like a reconstruction, kind of transitioning to OBS, customizing things. I will be doing a retro stream tomorrow, so if you guys like fun 80s, 90s theme stuff, I will be streaming a Super Nintendo game, Soul Blazer, tomorrow, just for fun, just having fun revisiting some old things from my childhood. But yeah, so there's going to be a lot more variety streams in the future, probably another week to finish the new setup. I typically do stream The Last of Us stuff, once every 4 or 6 weeks. I replay the game. But yeah, there's all kinds of different things lined up that we're going to be playing there. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoy your streams, and you have done a good variety of games. You were playing Uncharted the other day, which was really fun. It was
Right.
neat popping in for that. Um, yeah, as far as I go, I just have I'm working on a Factions 2 video just very, very slowly right now, which I think a lot of people will want to talk about that. So I'll be working on that. But for the most part, I've been taking more of a break from the trying to do daily stuff just to try to, I don't know, make sure that I'm staying healthy in my own personal life, like not
Right.
putting too much into The Last of Us as I have for the last 4 years. But speaking of The Last of Us in the future, the HBO series got
Yes.
the news dropped like hours after our last live stream last month.
Yes, it did.
Yes, I'm like, of course they released this
Right.
now, right after we got off. They have cast Joel and Ellie,
Yes.
which is, the two probably biggest roles in the entire series. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. What do you think
Yes.
about this casting choice?
I am over the moon excited about this casting choice. I mean, just starting with Bella, just so excited that they're actually, casting someone that's Ellie's age and the beginning of the story. And of
Mhm.
course, I love Pedro. So I'm super pumped. Um, that's my initial reactions. I keep feeling better and better, just everything about it.
Yeah, the first thing that I noticed is that they are both Game of Thrones alums.
This is true.
Yes, so that made me think, I wonder if that will play a big role going forward in some of the other roles as well. Just because I
Could
know
be.
HBO likes keeping a lot of the same actor. They kind of have like their HBO core of actors that they kind of
Yes.
use. I don't want to say interchangeably, but they're very familiar with them, and they do a very good job with their series. So I personally thought it was great. I know a lot of people didn't really know who Bella was, but I think she'd be great as Ellie. She has
Absolutely.
good presence and feistiness, and also an innocence about it to play a young
Yeah.
Ellie. And that's the thing is, I think some people were trying to think of the Last was Part Two, like older Ellie, and trying to be like, oh, like that doesn't. It's like it's got to start somewhere at the beginning, right? And so
Sure.
they need to have a young Ellie. So who knows? I wonder if she'll stay as Ellie the entire time, or if they will change it over, going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also just fun, and I don't know about for you, but for me, just looking at them and knowing that they've done screen tests, that obviously they've been in the room with Neil and he's watched them, what scenes did he have them doing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
we know that they're sold, that this is who they want. And so I'm excited to see what chemistry they must have seen in those private rooms that probably, I think it's safe to say, probably got them very excited, especially someone like Neil seeing this story that's so important to him come to life, on this new medium.
Yeah, when I think of Pedro, I mean, like, I see the two like big positives I see right off the bat was we've seen him be extremely aggressive, in Game of Thrones. He played a character who's extremely aggressive, and passionate. But then as the Mandalorian, you had this character who was much more composed, right, and much more soft
Right.
spoken, and it really showed a good range. I think the one thing some people, he kind of has like a Spanish accent a little bit in there. I think they're wondering if he can pull off the hillbilly Joel a bit, But
Yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's
I'm
great.
excited to see his Central Texas accent. So we'll see how it plays
Absolutely.
out.
And I know some people wanted Nikolai Coster-Waldau to be Joel, but the more I think about it, the more I think he'd be the perfect Tommy, right?
That would be cool. Oh, and you know what? Right with what you're saying about the alumni, maybe he will be Tommy.
I
I
know.
mean,
Yep, exactly. I
you
think,
know,
yeah, I think it's a valid point.
that's a valid point.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So exciting news with the HBO series. I can't wait to see what develops with that. So
Yeah.
today, we're gonna jump into Jackson here, and you've put together some really interesting points about the hope of Jackson. And
Yes.
one thing I like about this is I like this form because we can discuss ideas on these different factions, and not everyone is going to agree on the same viewpoints in future. But I love that we have this form that we can kind of like put these ideas out there, and
Yeah.
then we can run with them as far as we want or not.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just really great to be able to take and just talk about what it means to us at first glance, and
Mm-hmm.
also on meditating over. We play it time and time again, and we're thinking about it, and when we're making videos and all that kind of great stuff. So it's just really great to be able to kind of hone in on these different groups that just create this amazing world of light and shadow.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated with your idea of Jackson as a symbol of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like many of us, I always saw the Jackson that we saw in both of these games, as that the symbol for mankind kind of reclaiming that semblance, of peace and order, sustainability, creating
Mm-hmm.
like this utopos, if you will, the good place, the ideal place. They have electricity, they raise crops, livestock, all that kind of good stuff. We see in part 2 that they have a school, and they even have a government, in the form of a council of elders.
Mm-hmm.
They have the big defensive walls, the militia, all that kind of good stuff, the rotating shifts of patrols that we get to intimately be a part of. This team that not only keeps the surrounding territory safe, by clearing infected and all that kind of fun stuff we get to do, and salvaging supplies for the community. But I think most importantly that they're keeping their eyes and ears out for stragglers that may be looking for this new home, this thing that many of them have always been looking for and never thought they would find in this brutal world. So, we're dealing with this very sophisticated and self-sustained society that's unique in at least the factions and communities that we have been shown in the Last of Us universe. Jackson has clearly been shown to us, the player, the audience time and again as being very different from the brutality of this, outside world, like it's almost like this light in the darkness, this, oasis, if you will. And, of course, while settlements and encampments may not be unheard of, I always found Abby's reaction to like
Yes.
seeing Jackson, in that
Mm-hmm.
amazing shot glowing in the distance when she says, it's a fucking city. I always found that to be somewhat telling for several reasons. And my immediate thought was her reaction, and Owen, making a big deal about showing this to her. He takes her away from everybody else and is like, I want to show you something. You
Mm-hmm.
know, my immediate thought, just interpreting all that in her when she says that powerful line, the way she says it, is this is rare. Full blown self sustained cities like this out in the middle of nowhere. This is rare. We're not talking about, the big metropolitan Fedra occupied whatevers. This is like
Yes.
out in the middle of nowhere, and this beautiful kind of El Dorado type shot,
Yes.
um,
It,
and she's,
oh,
go ahead.
if I can just interrupt you for 1 second, when you
Yeah, yeah.
said that, it made me think of when we first go into Seattle. You're going into Seattle, you're expecting like this big fight, expecting
Yeah.
all of these WLF like everywhere, and there's
Yes.
nothing. You go like
Yes.
you're going through downtown, and I'm like, man, it's so
It's just,
quiet. You're
it's
like,
like you're wandering through, yeah, these ruins, like these Roman ruins. It's, yeah,
I mean,
definitely not this.
in modern day, yeah, Seattle is this huge, sprawling, massive population. And Jackson's relatively small compared to it. But
Sure.
in this world, it's completely reversed. Jackson has
Right.
this huge population that is supported out in this oasis, as you said. Yeah.
Right.
No, it just made me think of it as you said that, and it's such a great point. Such a
Yeah.
great point.
And going back to that feeling of them like overlooking the city and her saying that line with, almost this breathless kind of awe. It to me, it was always like the mere sight of that like took her away from her own grisly thoughts, if even only briefly.
Mm-hmm.
She has this thing that she's been possessed with for years now, devoting her whole life to it. And it's just like for just briefly she gets that glimpse of something. And Owen wanting to show it to her away from the others, to me, recalls the treasure of showing her the aquarium, this special, pure, untouched place that's different from all the chaos and the darkness permeating the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there was definitely something twinned, like in the pure soul of these two locations, the aquarium and Jackson, is, shown to Abby by Owen. To me, this might sound a little bit silly, but from a certain point of view, Owen was like this herald in her subconscious, trying to show her the light, trying to remind her not just of innocence lost, but of what can still be. Whether that's, showing her Jackson or showing her the aquarium,
Mm-hmm.
or, telling her about a rumor that the Fireflies may have survived. To me, Jackson stands shoulder to shoulder with those ideas as the most manifested version of, these kind of hopes and dreams come to life. And I don't know about you, Strats, but I always found that to be really powerful.
Yeah, and that is the hero's journey, is it not? The herald appears to the hero.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
It
I
is.
think you're
It
right.
is, and it actually Joseph Campbell uses those exact words, a herald. And that's the first thing I thought of when you mentioned that, and that's true. And there's something else about Abby and Owen, and you get that in this very first scene. When they're at this overlook, is the intimacy between them. Like at first you're thinking that they're a couple, like they're together, and then you realize, oh no, actually, Owen
Yes.
has Mel and she's pregnant,
Right.
and then
Right.
you see Abby's reaction, and it's like a very strong, very, very strong reaction. Like right off the bat, you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of history between these two. Like you just met them, but you can tell there's a lot of history. And yeah, I always found their relationship to be one of the more interesting ones in The Last of Us Part 2, just because I think so many people just did want them to get back together, and
Yes.
you saw like everything that they had gone through at that point. Much like Ellie and Joel, they had their own journey.
Sure.
Yeah, that stemmed from St. Mary's.
And
Absolutely.
definitely love. There was a lot of real love there. I mean, even beyond passion, beyond, there was just a genuine love, I felt.
Absolutely.
And just kind of continuing with that theme of hope, for Jackson, in the Finding Strings portion of the game that we love,
Mm-hmm.
in that first letter we can find in the motel, I always felt like that letter really did a good job of showing Jackson as this personified idea, of what like the best version of mankind can be, and the effect that can have on your, your average, I guess, kind of hardened post-apocalyptic, kind of soul who first encounters Jackson. And
Mm-hmm.
here I'll read this letter here for everyone. Ruby, I'm sorry if our patrol overwhelmed you yesterday. We don't run into new people too often. I understand why you might have been nervous to follow us to Jackson, but it really is a nice place. We've got electricity, good crops. Could be something special for you and your family. My boys are different people here. Before Jackson, we were so focused on just staying alive, I didn't like who they were becoming. They started acting like the people we were running away from. These days, they're on roofs, fixing holes, digging trenches. Hard work, but they come home every night excited about building up this place. They've got community, a reason to be accountable. You used to be a teacher. You could have a classroom of kids just hungry for knowledge. This isn't a fantasy. Please consider just stopping by. Let me show you around, Tara.
Yeah, that's so great. It's true. I mean, in this universe and in this fallen universe, it's how could you ever trust another again? After everything that has happened, they're saying like, yeah, just come with us, And once
Right.
again, like the first thing that comes to my mind, I know we talked about it last time, The Walking Dead, Terminus.
Right.
This place that seemed like a Jackson, seemed like a utopia, but was
Right.
really just this horrible slaughterhouse that they just siphon people to.
Right.
And that's the whole thing about this, and that's why this is such a interesting symbol of hope, and how people, much like the hero's journey, maybe aren't ready to accept that call at first. Like they just,
Right.
how can I ever trust another person again?
Yeah, and I also, it made me think of just the spirit of the letter, and kind of like what you're talking about, Terminus. It made me think of David from part one, because he seems
Mhm.
like this really nice guy, and he's telling Ellie, we've got women and children, and he seems so nice. And if you're just going on vibes alone, you would be like, I think I can trust this guy, unless your gut's just telling you something else.
Mhm.
And we see how standoffish Ellie is. She doesn't trust them. And I didn't think that was because she saw through. I think it was because, just like this letter, you learn to be hard, and you learn to be distrustful of everyone, even when they're nice, so that's,
Yep. Yeah,
really
that's the
powerful stuff.
nature. That's the nature of the environment. And one thing that Jackson does have, which I give a lot of credit to the writers for, is the character Seth, which is kind of like this
Yeah,
catalyst of this moment of Ellie and Joel having kind of a little bit of a breakdown. I mean, they've had years of
sure.
breakdown at that point, but kind of like this tipping point where she kind of publicly chastises him. To the fact that they have that character there, yes, he's bigoted, but to his credence, or to his I don't know what you want to call it, he apologizes to Ellie. I mean, yeah, it's
Right.
begrudgingly, and it seemed like it was definitely spurned by Maria.
Yeah,
We'll get into Maria in a little bit.
sure, sure, sure.
But he does like, hey, like, I'm sorry, like, here's a steak sandwich, which
Right,
is
right.
just kind of a weird gesture. But then again, like, how often are there steak sandwiches in the
That's what
post-apocalyptic world?
yeah, what I was thinking.
I,
And I also thought that, just kind of going on what you're saying, that Maria wouldn't do that if she didn't know, like, yes, this guy has certain views that are messed up and needs to
mhm.
change, but there's more to him. Just not throw the baby out with the bathwater type deal, and let's maintain the peace.
Yeah, and I think that makes their community stronger, that they're willing to
Yeah,
accept two sides. Like, okay, like, yeah, this guy, he has these issues, or he has these views that are, maybe don't completely align, but we can still listen to him, we can still work with that, versus just like having a more dogmatic approach, right? To
right.
me, I see that as having principles, not rules, which is a beautiful thing in my mind, a really, really beautiful thing. Because rules can be so inflexible, but principles, you
Right.
can get a deeper meaning behind what they're going for. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and and
Oh, go ahead.
and definitely a lot more flexible and compassionate than something like the Salem witch trials, which can happen in colonies and stuff like that. So it can go very dark very quickly.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's intolerance dogmatism taken to the nth degree.
Right.
All right, and then how? What? This is a great last slide you had here.
Yeah.
I knew
Very.
I knew exactly what it was when once I first saw it.
Yeah. So, we're talking about Jackson as a symbol of hope. I guess the last point I wanted to explore with you guys on this line of thought is, the positive idealism that Jackson spreads and everything, I guess, kind of contained in that. As we all know, in the final cutscene of Finding Strings, Ellie and Joel discover the two teenagers. I think their names are Adam and Sydney. They tell us that went missing the year before. And as we get into it, we see Sydney's dead and Adam has transformed into a clicker. And Ellie reads that letter they left behind that says, Jackson is a wonderful place, but we got tired of hearing the stories of people suffering everywhere else. We wanted to save lives. We had good intentions. We didn't make it an hour before running into a horde. So here we have these two young people who have been so inspired by Jackson that they've become, to me, out of touch with the harsh reality of what the world is really like out there. Most people out in the world would never dream of a place like Jackson. And if they knew it was there, they would never want to leave, to never have to look for food every day, never have to look over your shoulder every day, to have this safe community. And these two teenagers are so idealistic that they've become out of touch with what that is. They've allowed themselves to be possessed by this, let's be honest, this insane notion of just wanting to set out alone together on this adventure to, quote, save lives and help people, which, while sweet, is completely foolish and naive in this world. And so to me, that was this cautionary tale about respecting the state of the world and being mindful of your own capabilities, and certainly not taking a place, like Jackson for granted, which for all intents and purposes, Jackson is a place that just should not exist. So cherish it, respect it, and certainly respect the harsh realities of the world you're inhabiting,
Absolutely. Yeah, it is isolated from the rest of the world, from the rest of this fallen world. And I'm not sure if they grew up there or if they like arrived as very young, at a
Right.
very young age. But
Children.
I just imagine if your whole experience of this world was Jackson, then you would think, right? You would definitely
Right.
you definitely think, oh, like I want to like spread this love and this kind of community outwards.
Yes.
Whereas so much of everyone who had come there was just shell shocked, like, oh, I can't, like, almost, like they just can't deal with the outside world, like they would never want to leave, right?
Right.
And so there's an interesting dynamism to that, the idea of creating this wonderful place, but then also like the future generations trying to respectfully convey to them, like, okay, this is a special place we live, but the rest of the world is not like this. This is
Right.
at this time the world is not there, and it almost gets into a little bit of M. Night Shyamalan's Village feel. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen
it
that.
does.
Yeah. I love that movie because it just.
I do too. I think
Yeah.
we're two people that love it because everybody else seemed to hate it for some reason.
I know. I thought it was fascinating. I love the concept of it, of people trying to create this utopia kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then creating these negative entities to kind of like frame that and how that can go very, very wrong. And
Yeah.
I just love that. I think that's a great movie and idea. And to kind of we're gonna like continue with this idea, but now with a slightly different take on it. So I put out 4 video essays on The Last of Us Part 2. These 4 here, in each of them, I refer to Jackson as Elysium. Elysium being this, Greek kind of haven, almost like a heaven of fallen warriors. And I was drawn to this idea very, very succinctly in that mythology video, the thumbnail in the upper left. It was when the game had not come out yet. We'd seen like trailers and whatnot. We'd seen Jackson, and there was 2 things that really kind of drew me to it. I'm gonna put let's see, I got this one here, these golden fields of Elysium, as I call them, of Jackson. So and we're going to take a look at actual pictures of Jackson later. There's no really like golden fields like this outside of Jackson. This is
Right.
definitely something that was added at a later point. And I think there's something to that. And to go along, if you know Dante's Inferno, if you know that story, basically Dante, he's the main character of his own story, his own epic poem, and he travels from Elysium down to the depths of Hades. And here's Gladiator, a picture of Gladiator, the movie, and it's depicted in very much the same way. This is Elysium. This is after he passes away. He goes back to his wife and his son in Elysium. Once again,
and it's funny that to interject, it's funny that you use that, because like I've told you before, every time you mention Elysium, that is immediately what I think of, is that scene from that movie with him touching the grains
absolutely
with his hand.
Yep.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It is a powerful image, and for me that was an immediate connection between the two. Once we saw Joel and Tommy riding through those fields. I mean, yes, they are riding into the sunset, but it's also just kind of really, for me, hit home. And if you look at some of the artwork that was made, specifically some of the ancient, more dated artwork, where they talk about Elysium and kind of like descending like up and down through these fire-like wheat fields. It's, for me, it really kind of like hit to the core of maybe what they were initially going for, which I will later show pretty much is exactly what they were initially going for, but it changed over time. So the idea of going from this Elysium, which Jackson is high up altitude wise, so you go from these mountaintops of Jackson, descend down to Seattle. So I've been to Seattle a bunch. I live not that far from it, and Seattle is very, very low. Seattle is actually a city that was built upon another city. The original city was covered in mud. Like, there was constant mudslides and landslides. So they had to literally build the city on top of this swamp. Wow. So if you go there, there's this whole second like city underneath the city that's, obviously like abandoned, and it was built atop. All the structures, what used to be the first level, the second level became the first level. It's a really fascinating. If you ever go to Seattle, do the underground tour. It's really, really fascinating. But once again, with the underground, I could not help but be drawn to the idea of this Dante's Divine Comedy of having an Elysium and a Hades concept. Yeah, and the descending down, because altitude-wise, you literally descend down. So once I did eventually play The Last of Us Part 2, there was a couple things that really stood out to me, but one of them was on Abby's shelf there on the right is Dante's Divine Comedy. It's literally right there. So I'm like, nice. Oh, okay, that's a nice nod. And then, shortly thereafter, I think this was in late June or early July, Hallie Gross and Neil Druckmann gave an interview. And in this interview, this was like one of the first times they really went into depth about this story. There was this little passage here that to me was just like, okay, there it is. Hallie says, we used to have 5 days in Seattle for each girl instead of 3. And then Druckmann said, there was a whole side story where Ellie went to Seraphite Island, and we had so much more to say about the Seraphites and Ellie's journey going there. She's going through like the different layers of hell, and she keeps going forward. So,
jeez.
Yeah. So to me, it pretty much tells me that was maybe one of the big themes, one of the big ideas that they were initially going for of this kind of descent, which I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea of having a modern game that's based off, a classical literature.
Yes.
Like obviously a lot of games and stuff will have those classical themes and stuff, but I don't know. I really think that a Dante's Divine Comedy game would be amazing nowadays.
Yes.
I really do.
And it's, even if they didn't get the 5 days for each girl, which would be amazing, but even though we didn't get that, what he says and what you share with us, she's going through the different layers of hell and she just still keeps going forward. Mm-hmm. Even without the 5 days, we totally get that when we're playing as Ellie. And every part that we're playing as Ellie, once the big moment happens and she's in Seattle, from there to the end of the game, we're just like, no, Ellie, stop, please, please, just no more, no more. But she just keeps pushing. So props to them. I mean, that spirit of that is still there. That of just going through the layers of hell for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk about the Seraphites.
Yes.
We'll talk about at the end which faction we should tackle next, but
Absolutely.
Just this quote here from Druckmann really confirmed to me, because I definitely felt when I played the game, like, man, I feel like the Seraphites had so much more. I really did, and sure enough, it seemed like they really did, and it was something that had to be cut going forward. So yeah, with that, and it's just, it's a fun theory that was kind of confirmed a bit with this quote from Druckmann, which was fun to see. It was neat to see. It's just one little quote. You don't really hear very much about these things. They don't really confirm stuff like that. But it was fun. But speaking of fun theories, you have a fun theory.
Yes. It's it's just a fun little theory about Jackson's founder. When we meet Tommy and Maria in part 1, we're told that Jackson is 20 families strong, and they actually get power ostensibly for the first time. Like, sure, maybe they have some gasoline or diesel generators and stuff, but them being there at the dam, we're actually experiencing them like getting sustainable power for the first time when we as the player, we're meeting Tommy and Maria at the dam. Tommy tells Joel that Jackson was founded by Maria and her father, and while we are never introduced to her father in part 1 or part 2 directly in the narrative, I do think there's a fun little clue about who her father could be, who her father is, and we actually can meet him in part 2, so to speak. So before we reveal that, we do know that the group that's getting the dam up and running is a separate group that has traveled at least some distance away from Jackson to the dam. We know the dam is some distance from the town, because Tommy makes a point to say we've been here at the dam a week, but it feels like forever. Hinting that they don't have the comforts of home. So only Tommy and Maria and their group of engineers are there, along with whatever support people they need for that. We also have the dog Buckley at the dam, which is where we're first introduced to this character. Mm-hmm. So it stands to reason that Buckley's human family is part of the dam group. So I asked the question, what if Buckley is Maria's dog, or more to the point, the dog of her family? So at this point in time, he goes where she goes. So in part 2, we see an older gentleman modeled after Gustavo Santaolalla sitting smack dab in the middle of town square like he owns the place, playing his banjo with Buckley resting at his side. Is Gustavo's character Maria's dad, and did they establish Jackson together, hence Buckley's connection to them both? Probably not true, but it's a very fun theory that I like to run with as my headcanon until proven otherwise. Why not?
I love this theory. I think that is so good. I really do. I mean, he is like front and center, and for me that always kind of felt like a little bit like, oh, maybe it's just a nod to Gustavo. I mean, he's very recognizable. I knew it was him immediately.
Yes.
But maybe that is completely true. I mean, Buckley is true. The dog is there. Maybe the dog just likes listening to the music, but maybe there is something else. It's a great theory. I do like this theory quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's true. We never do get to like directly be like Maria, like, oh, hey, here's my dad. He's the founder of Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a good theory. I do like this. And you know what? I think there was something that was in the game that was cut. And I think maybe this theory could have been validated during this whole thing. So the Jackson dance, in an interview that Neil Druckmann gave, he talked about how the Jackson dance scene was initially a playable level.
Oh my God.
Yes, you were able to walk around and interact with people. You were able to go to the kids. The kids had this like clicker game, like you were able to play, like much like you played the snowball game with the kids, or with Dina early on. There was a clicker game that you could play. Like one person was the clicker and the other person were like the survivors.
Oh my God.
Yes, and so
I need this.
Yeah, so there was. They said that the level I think was 90% complete. It was
Oh my
90%
god.
complete, and then they had to cut it because they felt that it slowed down the game quite a bit. Like the pacing wasn't there because like you'd have all these intense things. Because I think it happened right after like the first half of Seattle.
Right.
Um, you know, then it cuts and then you see like this dance scene or whatever. And so I think it was like jarring to have like this really intense moment and then to be like, oh, now I'm walking around, you know, a Jackson dance. And so I
Sure.
think they cut it for, you know, for pacing. Um,
Well, it
but
sounds like they've got a good portion of a DLC made already for us.
I know, right?
We can hope.
I know. I feel this is something that, even though I said we do spend a lot of time in Jackson, both in the first game and the second game, I feel like so many people say like, man, I wish I could explore Jackson more. And I know
Yeah.
people would love to explore that dance scene and see everything else that's going on there. It would really just enhance the lore of Jackson quite a bit. And maybe we can meet, you know, the founder of Jackson and talk to him and have this whole dialogue back and
Yeah.
forth about what it was like.
Well, thanks, Strats, because now I'll be dreaming of 2 different DLCs every day: the Bill DLC and now the Jackson Dance DLC every day now.
And the Ish DLC.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. It goes on and on.
Yeah. I like Bill DLC for sure. I think that's probably
Yeah.
my number one, but I'm just dreaming.
Yeah.
Speaking of the first game, so I wanted to kind of talk about Maria and Tommy. We haven't covered them a lot in this discussion of Jackson so far, but there's something about the two of them from the first game to the second game that I think kind of mirrors Jackson as a whole. When we first come across the dam, and Joel and Ellie walk up to the gate, you know, you get you get Tommy and Maria both pointing rifles at him. We're like, oh, this is not going to
Yeah.
go well. Like, oh, great. And then you realize, oh, this is Joel's brother, you know, estranged brother, you know, right?
Right.
And like, what was it like? Ellie says like, oh, like how are things between you and your brother? And he's like, well, he said the last time I saw him, he said if I ever see your face again, you know, I'll kill you or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh wow, okay, that's intense. But then there's none of that. Like the second he sees him,
Yeah.
like, oh, it's my goddamn brother or something like that, and he's like
Yeah.
hugging
My
him,
goddamn brother.
and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's just like the tension. It was just like released instantly. It's like whoosh, like okay, you know.
Yeah.
And Tommy really is seen as this, for me, this really reasonable, caring, loving and like really high principled guy.
Yeah.
Like he won't let Joel like push him around in his own home. You know, he's like, you do that again,
Mhm.
it's not going to end well for you. Like
Yes.
it shows that he's no longer this pissant little brother, right? He's like grown as a
Right.
person. He lets him know that he's like, no, I'm like an important person in this community. You're a guest here. You're my brother. I love you, but you know, I'm gonna have to put you in your place here.
Right.
And so, and Maria, obviously, you know, I think both Joel and the player get kind of frightened of her, like when you see her like coming over the first time, like
Mhm.
after like Joel tries to pass Ellie off to Tommy, she's like, "And you a hole," just like whoa, like okay, Maria, like people, like he says, like your wife kind of scares me, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want anything to happen to you. Um, yeah, and they developed in a short amount of time in that first game a really good chemistry and idea of who these people are. And so that was one of the cool things to really experience in part two, was to take that to the next level. But I feel like even from the very beginning, it seemed like a very different Jackson and a very different Maria. Maria is still the same no nonsense character, but it's interesting how yes, she's keeping the peace in Jackson here. She's obviously a person of high esteem and I think very wise to have Seth and Ellie apologize, even though neither of them really want to. She can see the
Sure.
bigger picture, and she talks to Ellie like, "Hey, how are things going between you and Joel?" You know, she's like very in tune with what's going on with each person in Jackson. The
Mhm.
interesting thing that also about her is you never really see her with Tommy. I think you might see them for
That's true.
a split second at the dance, like just a
At the
split second.
dance.
Yeah, that's about it though. But the rest of the game, like it's always her talking with, you know, Jesse and Ellie, or her talking with Dina and Ellie. It's talking about her idiot husband. Go save my idiot husband, you know.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows that maybe things were really strained from them from the get go here. And in the same way that I talked about Elysium, and I kind of called it like a false Elysium a bit in a couple of my videos, how that idealism kind of, as the game goes on, um, we see how both Tommy and Maria change quite a bit.
Mhm.
Mostly Tommy. Tommy becomes, you know, the uh, the half man, so to speak. He kills Manny of the WLF with a shot through the eye, and then is shot through the eye himself by Abby. An eye for an
That is
eye.
so awesome.
Yes.
That is, I never put that two and two together, so that's an awesome connection that you made there.
Yeah, and that's his mentality. That's his mentality. He's like, this lady killed Joel. You need to kill Abby. It's like, and how that mentality really doesn't serve anyone well.
No.
and in this scene, like, yeah, Tommy is he's pretty much a dick. He's a pretty big dick, for lack of a better word. But it's also, I had a lot of pity for him. I
Mhm.
saw him as this guy who is really holding on to the last thing that he has, is like this revenge, which Ellie knows like isn't gonna go anywhere. She's like,
Sure.
and he can't even do it himself. He can't even carry out this act himself because he's crippled. He's physically crippled. He's half blind. He's got like
Mhm.
um a an inability to walk well. You can tell he's like always like kind of like hitching around.
Right.
I think he's got a cane or something like that too, where he's always holding on to stuff. And he just, as a person, has lost pretty much everything. He's lost Maria. He shares that, oh yeah, they're taking time up away or whatever. Like
Yeah, time apart, yeah.
yeah, they're separated. And Ellie, he's like this warning to her, which she doesn't heed because she ends up leaving Dina. Right? It just
Yeah.
shows that what this mentality, what does it cost you? It costs you everything. Abby lost
Right.
Owen. Ellie lost Dina. Tommy loses Maria. And for him, like, to see him to go from this, this warm embrace of Joel the first time we meet him. Well, meet him after, the hometown, the initial
Right.
chapter. But to see him go from like this fun-loving, really warm uncle to going to this broken man, it really, it hit me as like, man, I really pity him quite a bit. I have a lot of sympathy for him, and just this demise that he's in. And that makes me think, I wonder if that is going to be illustrative of Jackson going forward in The Last of Us Part 3. Does Jackson fall? Um,
Mhm.
and for me, in my kind of theory, I know we've talked about it, 2 months ago, kind of like our ideas of Last of Us Part 3. I kind of saw like Jackson not completely falling, but having to be like definitely having a challenge and having to be reimagined, having
Hmm.
this in my thing, it was like this unstoppable horde that was coming, on when they're trying to figure out
Right.
what to do about it, and showing the decay of Jackson. And I kind of see that in Tommy and Maria's relationship a little bit. But
There's definitely a reflection, in that, especially since they're kind of like the leadership.
oh, absolutely, yeah, they are, yeah. And now I guess we can talk about, now that we've had all these theories and ideas and extrapolation, we can talk about the real Jackson.
Yeah, yeah,
Jackson, Wyoming
absolutely.
is a real place.
It absolutely is, yeah. So there is the real life Jackson, Wyoming, and it is located, what I was researching on the internet, in an area called Jackson Hole Valley. And as you guys can see, the city in the valley looks very reminiscent to all the distance shots of Jackson that we get to see in both games. Now, the question is the Jackson in game just like the Jackson in real life? While I don't live there, the answer is probably going to give us a little bit of yes and probably a whole lot of no. Um, at the very least, the main street of Jackson in game appears to be modeled after the main thoroughfare in the downtown area of Jackson Hole. When I was researching this, I couldn't tell if sometimes they just call the town Jackson Hole because after the valley, because it seems to me to be the only city that's there in the valley, but the
Hmm.
city is technically called Jackson. but on these travel blogs and stuff, people were referring to it as Jackson Hole and describing it. But it was great to that I was just so happened to be lucky enough to find this picture of the real life Jackson Main Street that looks near identical to the one, Ellie
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yep.
Jesse,
Jelly. I like
Ellie and Jelly, her and Jesse walk down in the game where Gustavo is. Talking about the research, one blogger that I found online described this whole area as, quote, a cowboy Disneyland, which made me crack up, saying that, describing it as lined with all these souvenir shops, all these high-end Western boutiques and nice restaurants and bars, which paints this really pretty, picturesque, picture. So it's easy to see how this kind of warm, colorful, rustic tourist area may have, I'm reaching here, I'm extrapolating, may have originally inspired perhaps Bruce Straley or Neil Druckmann if they visited this place in the years leading up to, part one's development, especially since there are also 3 major ski resorts in the mountains that overlook Jackson Hole, which may have been a vacation spot for these guys, right?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it seems like it's possible to travel to any of those ski resorts, or it's impossible to go to those ski resorts and not stop off in Jackson Hole Valley, to visit this rich and picturesque place if you're someone on vacation in the area. So I wonder if that was an influence on them,
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture of Bruce Straley kind of like in like a semi-cowboy outfit. I think he had like a hat on. He had like the flannel, the cowboy flannel.
That is so awesome.
I know. I just
it
remember
would be
seeing
really-
that. I just remember
Oh,
seeing that
man.
image. I know. Maybe he did. Maybe he did.
I
visit.
wish you could have found it and like put it up here, because if he revealed like this is him and the actual Jackson, that would just blow my mind, for that kind of interconnection of what's going on there.
Yeah, I know. I love this picture here with the 2 fronts. I mean, yeah, they definitely modeled it directly after it.
Yeah.
They did, and you can see some of the street fronts are very similar.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cowboy
Yeah,
bar, there it is. Yeah.
I could definitely see how visiting this area would just be inspiring you. What if somebody came to this place and built it up and restored it and stuff like that? Really, really awesome stuff there. Now, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I was saying
No.
there's the dam, right? The power plant.
Yeah. So as far as the dam is concerned, again, guys, obviously I don't live in this area, and if maybe if we have a strategist that has, they could give us some insight. But unless I missed something, there doesn't appear to be a dam or a hydroelectric power plant specifically in the Jackson Hole Valley. But that's fine. As we've talked about before, part one even suggests, the dam is some distance away from the settlement. They had to travel and set up barracks and stuff like that. Wikipedia lists Wyoming as having close to a dozen dams and hydroelectric power plants across the state, but they're all like hours and hours away from Jackson. They don't power that area. They all power different regions, except for one, the closest being a little less than an hour away by car, about 45 miles by road, close to the Idaho border on the Salt River, called, of course, the Salt River Hydroelectric Power Plant. It was very hard for me to find good pictures of it because while some of its components, canals, head gates, and all that kind of stuff are still in use, it looks like it has not been generating power since or before 1993 when it was placed in the National Registry. And while the dam, and the dam in the game that we see was probably modeled after some of the larger hydroelectric dams in Wyoming or in another state. Those are many, many hours away from Jackson. It's still, I did find these old pictures like showing inside where the turbines are and everything. It's interesting to see how these various elements kind of influence the version that does inhabit the world of The Last of Us, which I think is pretty cool. So it is conceivable that they did travel to this dam. Even this one, even though it looks different, it's conceivable that they got it up and working and that it could supply power to their valley.
The windows look almost identical.
Yes, don't they?
They do. They do. Like like the turbines are different, but the windows look very much the same.
Yeah, and the spirit of the room is the same. The spirit of what it feels like to be imagining yourself in the chamber looks the same as what we get in the game.
Absolutely. And I think in our last discussion last month when we went to the Santa Barbara train station, I think you see that certain things will be almost exactly identical, but then around
Yes.
it, things are just kind of in the spirit of, because they have to kind of make these levels that work from a level design, a game level design standpoint, which sometimes doesn't always work as a direct translation of like, okay, we're going to recreate this exact room. They have to change stuff. That's just
Yes.
part of the game.
And I
Um,
think it's special. I think it's kind of cool that a lot of it looks like the real, but then they put their own little twists on it. I actually think that's kind of special.
I agree. I agree. I love the DM. That is one thing. That's one thing about the multiplayer factions that is, I think, tricky for some people at first. Is you have all these different levels in the game, but all of them are different. They're slightly different. There's certain areas that are almost exactly the same,
Right.
but then there's other areas that are just completely different, and so it feels like, oh, this is Jackson, this is the dam, but it's a multiplayer map, so it's actually very different than from the game. But
Yeah.
all the textures and the feel are very similar, and I know for some people that kind of bothers them a little bit that it's not exactly the same as the single player, but for me it never really bothered me at all. It kind of was in the spirit of it, and I understood that it was a multiplayer
Yeah.
map that needed to work. Yeah, so I think that's a good little parallel. All right, and speaking of parallels, it's not really a parallel, but let's talk about Dina. I know a lot of people really want to know, what is the deal with Dina? Like, did they get back together? Did they get back
Yeah.
together with Ellie? What's the deal with the bracelet? You know, Ellie didn't have the bracelet on in Santa Barbara, but then she did when she went back to the house, which just goes to show you, oh, hey, they completely got back together. Now,
Right.
for me, and I know we're kind of in agreement, like that's a huge stretch. You know, just
Yeah.
do you want to speak to that for a bit?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll
And
go
and I
back and
would
forth.
and I would just like to preface this conversation by saying that Dina is absolutely one of my favorite support characters in The Last of Us Part 2, if not my favorite. Uh, so I love her, and obviously I would love to see more of Dina and Shannon in the series in a major role. But when I do think about that future, if I'm just being honest and I'm just being realistic, I don't think she's going to have a major role in a part 3 or a future. Certainly not on the scale, of what we got to experience with her amazingly here in part 2. Um, as I'm sure you do, and what we just talked about, get a lot of comments. I do as well on some of my Dina centric videos about
Hmm.
Ellie returning to the farm wearing the bracelet, and this somehow suggesting that she and Dina have made up because she wasn't wearing it when she left for California. And I always find this to be a puzzling conclusion to jump to,
Hmm.
because whether Ellie has returned to Jackson for surgery prior to returning to the homestead, to me was irrelevant. When Ellie arrives at the farm and enters an empty house, the storytellers are telling us a very clear message,
Hmm.
and it's a message of cost. Exactly what you were just talking about with Tommy and Maria, and what we've talked about with Owen and Abby. It's about cost. It's about what has this quest for vengeance cost her. They're not trying to give us this subtle nod. No, secretly, they really did get together. No, all that means is that Ellie's intention is that she wants to return to her family and to her loved one, and her journey has cost her the same as what it cost Abby and seemingly what it cost Tommy, the love of her life. And while Dina will probably always care for Ellie and always have love for her, the storytellers are telling us that Ellie's damage and Ellie's inability to confront her own inner shadow has destroyed the utopos, the good place, the dream that she and Dina tried to build together. And just like you were talking about, she's in her own hell, her own inferno, and she just kept going forward and kept going forward. And now that she has emerged and she did pull herself back at the last moment, that those choices and those decisions still bear a cost, um,
Indeed, indeed.
y-
And
yeah,
I think there actually is a parallel. I think there's a interesting parallel. It's not with Dina though. I think the bracelet is representative of what she lost, the cost. And the parallel for me is when I think of what Ellie had to deal with most in the last part two, which was Joel.
right.
Joel wore his watch the watch that Sarah
Oh,
gave him, right? That was like the constant reminder of what he lost, right? And you see him, he's always rubbing it. He's always
wow.
like, when he gets nervous, throughout the game, he'll like look down at it suddenly or rub it, It's particularly with when he's like interacting with Ellie, it's like this constant reminder, right? And so
Yes.
to me, maybe what they were going for, and I can't speak for Naughty Dog, we can just interpret this as maybe this was like, hey, this is Ellie's version of
Of the
Joel's
watch.
watch, of the watch, that she wears this to be like, hey, remember that time that the person you loved said, don't go, stay. And you basically said, screw you, I'm going anyways. This
Yes.
this is the reminder. So when you get that feeling, when you get that sense of rage and vengeance bubbling up again, look at that bracelet and be
Yes.
reminded of that choice you made before, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of how I see it. I do not see it, as Dina and Ellie like, oh, they're back together again, everything's good. I don't think that at all. I
Well,
mean,
Strats, I think that's
yeah,
an amazing connection that I never made before, and I think that's really on the nose. And in my view, with you bringing that to light, the watch and Dina's bracelet, both were gifts. Both were gifts from a loved one that
mm-hmm.
they did lose in some fashion, even though it's different. I think you hit it right on the head. That parallel there, and that's what she's going to carry with her as she continues her journey, wherever her journeys are going to take her.
Yeah. And like you said, I love Dina as a character. I really do. And obviously, she has JJ, which is this like one of the first like kids, babies, like the first newborn that we have in the Last of Us universe, which is interesting and frightening at the same time, right? The idea of
Sure.
raising a child in this world, although Jackson is kind of an ideal place maybe for that to happen. But I don't really see how much further her character could go. I really don't. I mean, I think she'll definitely would return, in a support role, but I think
Sure.
that, like you said, it would have to be minor. It probably won't be a major kind of role. But no, Shannon did a great job as Dina. I
Yes.
really love that. All right, so I think we are now going to get ready to get into the Q&A. Hopefully, Jasper should be joining us any minute now.
Right
Um,
on.
but we can start. We can start getting into some of these Q&A. And thank you once again, um, everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for being patient during this first hour presentation. I know it's a long time to be patient and to be wait. And I'm glad that you guys are conversing with each other. That's exactly what we love to see. But now I would love for you guys to bring forward any questions you have about like what we discussed today, or even just The Last of Us in general. It can be the HBO show. It can be really anything that you'd like to bring
Right
up.
on.
Yeah. So fire away, please. Please do. And once Jasper hops in the chat, then we'll do a quick
Yeah.
interview.
Transition.
Yeah, interview with him, transition, and we can do more Q&A with that.
And I love this picture you have, by the way, for the Q&A. It's amazing.
That scene was just it was really cool. It was really powerful, and I love that they're in a theater. Um,
Yes.
I love that metaphor of the theater. Like these tragedies and everything playing out. On a stage. Such a metaphor for life.
Yeah. Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. 100%.
And it's interesting. That they take refuge in these buildings of like art and science. Like they take refuge in the theater, and then Abby and Owen are in the aquarium. It's just it's a cool parallel between the two.
Such places of magic.
Yes. Darius Stone, have you read The Divine Comedy? I have. It was a long time ago. When I reread it, I didn't really reread the whole thing. I skimmed through certain sections that I wanted to when I was covering the mythology video. And there's a lot, and there's also a lot in the word usage, which I didn't want to get into the specifics. I kind of did a little bit in the mythology video, but talking about Tartarus and
Mhm.
Hades and Hell, and how those words are kind of used interchangeably at times. Like you'll find them in the Bible
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I could go into a whole different thing about that and the concept of hell and how it kind of became this amalgamation of some of these other ideas as far as like what is Hades and a place of torture and stuff like that, because and Gehenna is another one that you'll see sometimes. These different places, they don't necessarily, they kind of like take on similarities of these like Gehenna and Tartarus and Hell. Like they're different, but they kind of take on qualities from other ones, which may or may not be exactly what was intended.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's a whole different stream to get into the idea
Yeah.
of those words, the etymology and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do love Dante's Divine Comedy, and I think it would make a fantastic game.
We had to read it in high school, which was a long time ago for me, since I'm of the older persuasion. Uh,
That's
but
awesome. I love
I,
that
I,
idea. Yeah,
uh,
it should be required in high school. I do think
I,
so.
I we had to read it, and I don't remember much because I think I actually wasn't that interested in it
Hmm.
at the time. But I do remember kind of like the big plot twist at the end of how Lucifer's depicted, which I won't spoil for people that want to look it up or read it, because I thought it
Yeah,
was pretty cool, different than what you would expect.
very different.
Uh, I remember that having an impact on me creatively, and just like, wow, that's really rad.
All right, let's see. In your opinion, from Fabian, when do you think a TLOU 3 announcement would happen? I think it'd be a couple years off. I really do. I think they're focusing on a different IP as well as the multiplayer. So I think part 3 would be a little bit off. And I think from this Last of Us Part 2, they want to make sure things are in a really, really good place before they announce the game, so they don't want people constantly hounding them on Twitter about when the game's coming out.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think they're not going to announce it until they're kind of like in the home stretch, so to speak, a little bit. Kind of like what Rockstar did with Red Dead Redemption 2, and of course what they did with The Last of Us. Yeah, I agree.
Dragon Ball Radiant, do you think Jackson will eventually fall? Wolf, what do you think?
I think that's in the context that you presented in Strats. I think that's a really fascinating, and if that does happen, I'm totally on board, and I'm ready to engage in that story. That's not what I see personally happening, but if it does, I think it'll be tragic, powerful, and very moving.
Yeah, I mean, and when I said fall, I mean, yeah, I see it getting overrun, but then also being the same place that it's like reborn. Like
Sure.
eventually at the end of my vision, it was, the first of us. It was the foundation of a new. But sometimes, things have to be destroyed in order to be reborn and have like a
Very
new
true.
version. Yeah, to upgrade, so
Shiva.
to speak. Yep. Did you guys read Ellie's journal back at the farm? It talks about Ellie leaving Dina / JJ in regret, and supports that she didn't make up with them before returning to the farm. There you go.
There you go.
Yep. It just
The
another.
writing is on the wall or in the journal, so to speak.
The writing's on the journal. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, the good valid point there, Fire Girl. Thank you. That is a very good point.
Valid point.
Yep, valid point. Tofo Nardi, Dante's Divine Comedy, 3 parts: Hell, Purgatorium, and Heaven. Glad you quoted. This year it's his 700th anniversary of his death. In Italy, we're celebrating a lot. That's awesome. 700th anniversary. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing to check out. You should definitely check out Dante's Divine Comedy. I think as a youth, the name definitely like threw me for a loop. Like, Divine Comedy, like what is this, like a joke book?
Sure.
What is it talking about?
Joke book.
Yeah, it's good. It's good though. You should check it out. Let's see. What's up, Dreamy? What's up, Emerson? Often wonder what would have happened if they stuck together and Tommy died. Oh, talking about Jesse and Ellie. Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe he would have, or maybe he just would have like taken out a bunch of WLF, and maybe he would have taken out Abby. Who knows? Probably not, but yeah, who knows? Why haven't you talked about how the sins in hell are about love being expressed incorrectly, when that corresponds very well to Ellie's mission to avenge Joel? Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't. I mean, there's a lot of different viewpoints you can take on the Divine Comedy, and I specifically was trying to focus more on this, not so much the journey between the two, but the symbolism of Elysium and Hades.
Mhm.
Yeah, but no, that's a very valid point, Darius. Absolutely.
Very valid point.
What's next for Abby and Lev? Thoughts? That's a good question. Amazing Fantasy.
Yeah,
Wolf,
very amazing.
what do you think about Abby and Lev?
I think it's awesome. I think, in many ways it's a beautiful tabula rasa, and it's kind of like, in many ways, the Fireflies have undergone exactly what you've expressed with theories for Jackson. Kind of like almost being destroyed, Shiva like to be reborn again, as we see. So Abby and Lev would be walking that path. I like to think that since Abby does have medical knowledge, I mean, obviously she's not a sophisticated doctor, but she does have a lot of education from her father, that she could partner up and kind of lead the charge on trying to continue his research, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Lev being a part of that with her is what I like to think of. But really, I'm down for any story that just involves the two of them being Fireflies on Catalina Island or moving out into the continent. I'm down with whatever.
Yep. Yeah, I see Abby and Lev playing a support role to Ellie, which kind of leads to the next question. Do you think Ellie should play a vital role for part 3? Absolutely.
Absolutely, no question.
Yeah, this is really Ellie's story. I mean, I know the
Yes.
first game was about Joel, but it was really Joel viewing Ellie in his own light. And there's the biggest question of the whole game, the whole universe. Ellie's immunity and the future of humanity. That needs to be addressed. Part 3.
100%.
It's a huge question, huge, massive question.
And the cool thing is even if Ellie, becomes part of a cure, passes into legend. Hello there.
Oh, there's Jasper.
How's it going?
How's it going, Jasper?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. We're just starting the QA right now. So
awesome.
So everyone in chat, Jasper Jeon is the face model of Jesse there on the right, which you can see. He streams on Twitch. You stream on YouTube as well. He's a content creator. I recently learned that you're a former professional Muay Thai kickboxer as well, which I think is amazing. I was like, when I found that out, I was like, holy crap! Huge respect for you. Huge respect.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that was an interesting time in my life for sure. I don't fight anymore. I still train, but hardly the man I was when I was training.
I love that style though. I think that style is just so dang good, and so many. This is gonna sound really nerdy, but so many of my favorite fighting game characters use the Muay Thai style.
yeah, definitely. I'll definitely cater if I ever play a fighting game and the guy has anything close to a kickboxer, I'm picking that guy, even though he's the worst fighter.
Absolutely, that is so cool. So. Jasper, there's a couple of questions. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for this Q&A.
Of course. I don't ever get up this early, but for you, Strats and Wolf, I'm here.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, it's 7:10 on the Pacific Coast time where Jasper and I am an early bird. It's a bit of a rare thing, and I know. So thank you doubly for getting up extra early for us. I appreciate that so much.
No problem.
Yeah. So there was a couple questions that I wanted to kind of just ask you. I think the chat would be super interested in hearing. The first is, how did you land the gig of being Jesse's face model?
I'm trying to recollect how it happened, because I worked with Naughty Dog probably almost 4 years ago now. It would have to be, I believe it was back in 2017. But I think I was pretty unaware of what it was for exactly. I believe they reached out to my agent at that time, and they said that they'd love to book me for this job, some SAG job. I think it was project code name something like Dorothy or something like that, and I was like,
Mhm.
what the hell is that? It's like trying to look it up, like what games are called Dorothy? You know, nothing obviously came up except for like some kid games, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, maybe it's like a kid game or something. So I had literally no idea what it was, but my agent sounded pretty excited about it, and I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? So I signed a couple NDAs, and then I
Mhm.
think like once I actually got like the project name on the NDA, it said like it said TLOU, TLOU 2, and it went over my head completely. You know, I was just like, all right, TLOU 2, all right, cool. And I think when I got it, I was with like my my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, TLOU 2. She like started freaking out. I was like, oh shit, is this a pretty big game? She's like, are you kidding me? And then she told me what it was. I was like, oh damn, oh wait, The Last of Us. Oh, that like totally went over my head. So
Yeah.
I think it really sunk in once I like showed up at their studio, and as soon as the elevator opened, it said Naughty Dog. I was like, oh my god. Immediately as soon as I make a left, I see a huge blow up of like of Ellie, and then I see Crash Bandicoot 2. I was like, what the heck? What is going on? So I that's pretty much how I got it. Something that I guess they were looking for someone that could closely replicate what the concept artist had an idea of Jesse, but I had no idea at that time what it was for.
Yeah, gotcha. And did you know like what his fate would be after you got the role or before playing the game?
No, they did a really good job of not telling me anything. Me being very curious, I asked multiple times. I was, just not being too brash, but I was just like, hey, well, just making small conversation, trying to figure out what my character was gonna be like. But they did a good job of not telling me anything. It was very vague. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, and did you like what was your first feelings and reaction when you played through the game for the first time and you saw yourself in the game?
It was pretty surreal, and growing up as I think anybody would want to be in a video game, so it's very like something that like I had to like was able to check off my list of something that I think I wrote when I was like 5, like get into a video game. So it was definitely a surreal moment, and it was kind of weird seeing myself too, because I was like, wow, they really my face was sore from doing all those facial expressions. They literally caught everything, pretty accurately.
Awesome.
That's so cool. And speaking about that, like I know that they for like Ellie, they took like the original Ellie model, and then they took Ashley and they kind of like morphed it so it was like half Ashley and half Ellie. And I was curious, this is kind of a funny question. Did they ask for like baby pictures for like JJ to like more, like your baby pictures and Shannon's and like morph this or Caskeen? I know Caskeen and Garadon is the face model for Dina. Like did they do anything like that, or did they just make up their own kid?
No, I don't. No, they didn't ask me. They didn't ask me for any baby photos. Honestly, if they had, that'd be kind of weirded out.
We can't tell you why, but we need some baby pictures. You're like, what?
Yeah, I guess that would definitely maybe give something away. Right?
If you could imagine your kid 10 years from now, what do you think he'd look like?
Well, that's a good question. What do you see as the future of Jackson now that you've played the game and you've gone through the whole thing? Because today we're talking all about Jackson, which is why I'd love to have you come in and join us for this. What do you think is the future of Jackson for like a potential part 3?
I think there could be, some sort of peace, but after what had just happened prior to getting to that point, after seeing like JJ and the farm and all that stuff, I think there's gonna be definitely some sort of retaliation, from what was left off because of what happened with Ellie and Santa Barbara. And I think Jackson will always be that home, the home base, home place, but from what we saw in part 2, um, there was a sense of community and peace still, right?
Yes.
Right.
I honestly think in part 3, if and when that comes out, I think it will be, you know, again, a story of some sort of retaliation or revenge, which could be exciting to be a part of and to play,
Mhm.
to see what it would be like to, hey, look, like you're safe in Jackson, right?
Hmm.
You're home in Jackson, but now the battle's being brought to you,
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And that's kind of cool because your character actually asks Ellie, "Aren't you worried that these guys might come back and hurt us?" So if that does play out and you're bringing that up, it's kind of cool that your character is the one that's actually asking Ellie these
Right.
same
Yeah,
questions.
that's true. That's very true. And that might have been an idea, that they've
Mhm.
thought of, maybe like a precursor. I mean, the story's so well thought out. I wouldn't doubt it.
Hmm.
Yeah, in my kind of theory that I put forward for part 3, I did have Jackson kind of being overrun, both with by a clicker horde, like a massive clicker horde, but
Mm,
also by different factions that know of Ellie's immunity and kind of like vying to get her, so to speak, for their own
right, right.
uses. Yeah. A question from Fly, a good one. How do you think Tommy is coping with everything? If Ellie went back to Jackson, do you think she would have lied to Tommy about what happened? I think she would not. I think she would take her lessons from Joel, the big lie that Joel told her for years, and she would just tell Tommy right off the bat, no, I did not kill Abby. I found her. I actually freed her, and I let her go. After we fought for a little bit, but ultimately I decided not to. Yeah, and so I think that's a really that's a great question, Fly. It really is. I think she would not
Hmm.
lie to Tommy. I think he'd be crushed, but maybe that's something that he would have to deal with. It's on him. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I would think that after Ellie and Abby fought, and what she realized for herself, she would want to be able to have Tommy let go of that too. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, Eloise kind of had a follow up question to that. I also wonder what Ellie did after going back and what her relationship with Tommy is like after the fact. I bet he wasn't happy. Do you think he left Jackson? That's a really good question. It's hard to imagine like Jackson without Tommy, but at the same
I
point, he's so
yeah.
different. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I see Ellie and Abby. I mean Ellie and Abby. Ellie and Tommy leaving. That's definitely what I see. Just them having to move on from what's there, each for their own reasons.
Hmm.
And I think that Ellie could potentially actually not tell Tommy for various reasons. Um, you know, we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah. I do like the idea of them both leaving and kind of like having to reconnect in a way, maybe for like literally like convenience or like for survival having to connect, but maybe emotionally they are still very strained, but then having that
Yeah.
soften up over time, um,
Mm.
because in a way he's kind of like her uncle and really like her only family, in a way.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
really.
and Tommy really, I was feeling for Tommy towards the end of the game too, because like how Abby left off, like how he was left off by Abby,
Mm-hmm.
just a mess. He
Yep.
lost Joel. If I'm correct me if I'm mistaken. His wife also left him, right?
Yep, Maria left him. Yep.
Yes.
So like, what does he really have other than like this want for like revenge, this to hopefully fill this void, that he's dealing with.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. He lost everything. He did. So yeah, he's definitely a character that it'll be interesting to see where his future goes, because
I'd love to see a DLC with him and Ellie.
that would be cool.
just to fill off that story.
It'd be really
Absolutely.
interesting and a weird role reversal, because I feel like Ellie would have to protect him, much like Joel had to protect Ellie in the first game. I feel like
Yes.
she would definitely have to protect him because yeah, he's got like a limp and he's got bad vision now. He lost an eye, so it's just like, yeah, I could see that being an interesting thing to come out. Let's see. More questions. Q&A. What are your feelings on Jesse's character? Is it everything you hope for? Yeah, Jesse, what do you think about his character? And then also, will you audition to play Jesse in the Last of Us HBO series?
Honestly, like I really enjoyed Jesse's character. I do wish we were able to see more of a dynamic between Jesse, Dina, and Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just jumping into it and just introducing. Like I would love to have seen like maybe even if it was like a flashback of like how they even met and like what their dynamics were within each other, because it was really just you start off in Jackson, and you briefly get what their history is just from them having they're talking between each other, their pillow talks in between each other. But I would have loved to see more of that dynamic to have that for us, to be able to empathize and be relatable to them and see what their dynamic was. But other than that, I was really happy with what Jesse's character was. I kind of wish there was more of talk about Jesse after what happened to him, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wanted more time with Jesse, because I know they needed to cut a lot of stuff from the game. They had these grand ideas in this massive game. They ended up trimming a lot of stuff. Like we mentioned earlier in the stream, like each of the girls initially spent 5 days in Seattle. Ellie went to the Seraphied Island. And I think initially Jesse's character had a lot more to it. I think there were certain like aspects of that relationship, how it's kind of like this interesting triangle, how she was with Dina originally. And I think there was a lot more to that they had to kind of trim down just for the pace of the game. I really feel that, because there was the whole time, the 4 years that they were there, like Ellie first arriving in Jackson, and you see stuff implied through like journals and different like talk on the side about how these three of them kind of grew up together, these formative years from being, teenagers to young adults, where they went through a lot of stuff together and they really had each other's backs. And that's one of the things that's brought up, like Dina not being able to tell Jesse initially that she's pregnant and stuff, and her disbelief, and having a hard time even telling Ellie that, like it was all these different conflicting emotions, that was a little melodramatic and felt like kind of like a teenage kind of drama years and stuff, and how that kind of played out in this post-apocalyptic environment and revenge. And there's just so much going on, so much emotion. But the one thing that I really like about Jesse is just he kind of became like the Tommy of the first game, like this really solid rock of a friend, like just really stable and really a good conscience for Ellie. Like he's the one that really checks her in multiple situations. He's just like, hey, Team Jackson, But then also just like that scene where he says, I really hope you make it, and walks away. When he's like, let's go get Tommy. He's right over there. We know where he is. And she's like, no, we need the Abby. Like that. I'm so glad they had that scene. It's a really powerful scene. It really speaks to his character that he didn't lose sight of what was important. Like he just wanted to get his family and bring them back. And I like that. And he didn't just go along with Ellie there and be like, okay, we'll go get Abby first. And like, no, he didn't. He left. It's good. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're 100% right. That scene was a important like point in the game too, because as a player too, you think like, wait, is Ellie really is she gonna risk it all just to get Abby back? And it makes you think like, all right, what had Ellie done so far to get to this point? And you just you question too, like, fuck, should we go back and get Tommy too and help?
Yeah, it's true. Let's see. Question from BJ Parks. Did you work or meet with any people on the gameplay side directly?
like as far as like the other actors.
I think they were
I'm-
thinking like different people. They said Bruce Straley. Bruce Straley didn't really work on Last of Us Part 2, but was there any other of the animators or like co-directors? Like, did you meet with Anthony Newman or
Yeah,
Kit
yeah,
Martineau?
definitely the co-directors were there. I met Neil for a couple of days too. You know,
Awesome.
He
Mhm.
dropped in for a good amount of the times that just to make sure everything's going well and checking in on me to see how I'm doing. He's a great dude.
Awesome.
But yeah, we always had someone, either co-director or director, there with us during that time. And the people, the employees that did, Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker's scan were there as well, and they were telling me about them. I believe actually Norman Reedus was in there the day before I was. I'm not exactly sure for what, but they're telling me about him too.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I wonder if that was for Death Stranding or something.
it could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
It could have been. Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool. That's really cool. Let's see.
Do you,
Oh, go ahead.
Jasper? Do you ever find yourself quoting any of Jesse's lines?
Just my friend's problems are my friend's problems are goddamn, we can't think right now. What's that quote?
My friend's
My
problems.
friend's
are my
problems are
problem.
my problems.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. I really like that line he says.
Yeah, someone just mentioned that. Elvis said, I really love Jesse's character, honest, upfront, but taking people's feelings into consideration. It's something you don't often see in male characters, so I found it really cool. Yeah, it's true. I mean, Joel is kind of the opposite of that in a sense. Joel's got a lot going on in his world and his emotions.
Yeah.
But that also makes him a really compelling character in his own way, trying to like deal with that. Trying to deal with his loss.
Yeah, he's got a very, big chip on his shoulder, and it's relatable in a sense. It's very human.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. Joystick Pepsi, do you think Part 3 will explore Ellie trying to find the Firefly so they can make a vaccine, or something along those lines? We've kind of talked about that a bit, Wolf. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be a possibility if that's in her path. I think she has a lot of healing to do first before she's ready, and Part 3 could probably explore a redemptive path that might kind of cross lines with roads that would lead her there by her own choice, her own agency. I absolutely think that could be seen.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Any more questions? Let's see if you guys got any questions. Please fire away now. I'll look back. I know we skipped over a couple. A little bit.
What was it, Jasper? I know that we talked about this before when you visited on stream, but would you mind telling the strategists what it was like when you're playing the game and you see what happens to Jesse? How did that make you feel when you were going through that experience?
When the game first released, I did my best to avoid spoilers. And a lot of people were trying to tell me what happened, especially people that, some people reach out to me, some of my friends and stuff would reach out to me, and I would tell them before when the conversation would start, because they were huge Last of Us fans. I'm like, please don't mention anything about what happens to my character. Just to start off this conversation, before you say hi, how are you? Please don't mention anything. I know. I really want to experience it for myself. And it took a while, because like prior to The Last of Us Part 2 being released, I did not own a console for almost 10 years.
Okay.
I was more of a PC gamer, and I was into like I was very heavy into like Call of Duty Mobile. But I was finally able to get my hands on a PS4, because I know last year it was really hard to get it because it was sold out. It took a while for me to finally get to Jesse's part, only because I was taking breaks in between because I had a lot of other stuff going on. And it was kind of honestly, it was a little bit of a relief when I finally found out what happened with Jesse, because like I was like, finally, I don't have to like screen the DMs I was getting or email. You know, I was even getting emails of people trying to spoil it for me.
Yeah.
So sorry you went through that, Jess.
Yeah. So it was finally, it was, you know, I was shocked. You know, it took a while to process. I kind of had to like step away from part 2 for a second, you know, until finishing it. Just because it was just kind of weird seeing someone that looks exactly like me get shot in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know?
I can well imagine.
So I did kind of, you know, briefly rage quit, because it was like this buildup of like something that I've been waiting to find out what happened to my character, you know. For I think I found out like maybe a month ago what happened to him finally, you know, just after playing it through, finally getting to that point. So it was definitely interesting. I did have to, you know, I did stop the game there and just process everything that happened. I think I actually went back and played part 1 after that, and then came back and finished the game.
Yeah,
that's very powerful.
Jocelyn Metler, the face model for Abby, I think she had a very similar experience as you. What you just said, she like stepped away from part 2 for a long time, and I think she like streams and stuff now as well. And she hasn't streamed Last of Us Part 2 yet. She's gonna do it in a little bit. She said it's finally about time that she will. But as you said, she had to step away from it and just wanted like nothing to do with it because there's just so much. Especially, I mean, her character was not the most well received. I mean, obviously a lot of controversy and stuff behind it, even though she's a really great character.
Yeah, and Jocelyn is a sweethart. You know, I've briefly talked with her over Twitter and stuff. She's just very kind human being in person.
Awesome.
Exactly, and that's the thing. People need to be able to separate, you know, the two, like Abby the character and Jocelyn the human, you know.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
For that matter.
You know, and I get that question a lot too. It's like, hey, do you hate Abby? You know, do you hate the people that play Abby? I'm like, no, I have nothing against them, and it's just a part of the story, you know. Like, it's really one of the biggest driving forces in the game too. You know, that's why you get to play, you know, Abby and Ellie.
Absolutely.
So I have no ill will against them. It was a beautiful game, masterpiece. Loved it.
I like that they used face models because I think it adds a realism to the game. I mean, when you look at different games, like sometimes like characters can look cool, but they still sometimes will look like not realistic. Where I think, you know, Jesse, Dina, like these characters, they look so real because they are. You know, they're real. That's just, I think, a really brilliant thing that they did. They said, let's not try to like recreate something from scratch, but actually take a real person and enhance that in this character. I think it adds a real authenticity to the game. Definitely. Mark Cano said, having lost 2 fingers, do you think it'll affect the way Ellie uses weapons in any way in part 3? Absolutely. I think she'll have to adjust and survive to use that a take on her iconic phrase, endure and survive. Yes.
Don't they make a reference on Abby's side of the game when she gets to the fob and somebody lost fingers and she's like, but you still got the 3 that count or something like that?
Yes,
like
yes.
Pull the trigger.
Yep.
So I just thought that was kind of a cool foreshadowing that it ain't gonna stop it from pulling a trigger, boy.
Oda Humanity, have any of you either introduced this game to loved ones by either playing it for them, watching them play it, or encourage them to play it, and question about how they viewed it? That's a good question. For me personally, I mean, I talk about the game. I'm not really like a preacher or anything like that as far as like the game. Like, I know I have this YouTube channel and stuff, but I don't like, if I know someone's interested in like a certain story or something like that, I might mention it, but I don't actively go out and try to like convert people to play TLOU. I don't. If there's ever like an opportunity in a conversation that arises, then I'll mention it for sure. But
right.
Yeah, that's my take. I don't know. Jasper, Wolf, what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Jasper.
You know, my mom actually asked me about it, and she was asking me like, hey, can I watch you play it? And I'm like, you really don't want to see what happens to my character? She's like, come on, you know. And actually, this indie film I did recently came out on Amazon Prime, and she was asking like how to watch it and stuff. And it's a very dark story, and it's based off of like a true character, true person in real life. And in the story, throughout the story of that film, like he gets tortured and ultimately killed. And she sent me a screenshot of it. I was like, oh my god, there's no way you found it and you watched. So I'm thinking if she can handle that, she could probably handle the outcome of Jesse.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, that puts you in a very precarious position, Jasper. You're trying to protect her.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
man, all
She's
these
like-
doc projects.
Yeah, she like watched it during dinner with my stepdad, and I'm like, you guys really like, and it's a very dark film. So I wouldn't, I could probably send her some clips of Jesse now. I probably won't. It won't be the first thing I send her of Jesse, what happens to him, but
Mhm.
little bits and pieces. I'll slowly ease her way
Yeah.
into it. And actually, the manager I have now, our first initial meeting was last year, and the first thing he said when I first met him was like, "Wait, are you Jesse from The Last of Us?" So it's weird how it's now
Awesome.
getting involved in like, my personal life, but I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Right.
so cool. Let's see. Reeftron, do any of you have The Last of Us or Last of Us Part 2 Platinum trophies? I have The Last of Us Platinum trophy for the first game on my personal account. I don't have it on the TLOU Strategist account because, I played it endlessly on my personal account before I even started this channel. And then once I started this channel, it was mostly focused on the multiplayer. So...
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I have unlocked everything. I didn't feel the need just for completionism to do it on the T-Strats account. I didn't. And I haven't gotten the platinum yet on Last of Us Part 2, but it's mostly just because I spend 1,000 hours making content on the game.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Absolutely.
So I had to like make that priority. It's like, yes, I could, finish the game, play it a bunch of times or whatever, or I could make videos about it, and try to share the love with others. And that's what I chose to do. Yeah. How about you, Wolf, or
No, certainly not for part 1. Man, what you need for the platinum on that is kind of crazy.
you need the factions?
Yeah, you need the factions. So, The Last of Us Part 2, not yet, but I'm almost there. And as I stream the game every 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be doing a permadeath playthrough, and then also collecting the last little trophies that I need to find. Fun stuff. Fun achievable things you can do on some of the modes they let you do. And for people that may not know, I'll just share this with you guys real quick. Anybody, any of the strategists out there that may not already know, and if you're like me and you don't like really hard difficulties, but you like grounded, or you want to get the grounded trophy, you can get that very achievably by turning on all the combat accessibility options, which they actually recommend you not to do because they know how it nerfs grounded. Trust me, if a baby player like me can go through grounded with ease with all the combat accessibility options, you guys can too, to get your grounded trophy if you need that. And then for permadeath, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it on very light permadeath by chapter the next time I stream the game.
Gotcha. Nice. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I'm taking notes, Wolf, because like again, I have not I've not owned a console for 10 years prior to playing The Last of Us Part 2. Right now, the very first time I played Part 2, it was on stream because I wanted to experience it with everyone else, and honestly, it would have probably been hard to get through it without a sense of community, and people like helping me out throughout this game, because it was honestly, I probably would have quit if I was playing it by myself, just because like I feel like Part 2 to play that for my very first game after a 10-year hiatus off of games was really challenging.
Yes, very much
me.
a challenge.
Oh, intense game.
So
and we do have an
actually
amazing community, man. Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing
it really
community
is. It's such a great community. And I've met so many awesome and amazing people, such as yourselves, Strats and Wolf. I'm very happy to have met you. And right now I'm actually playing Part 2 just for me, on hard difficulty, just to be able to experience that for myself now finally, and just take my time with it. So
Right on.
it's been a great time. It's been a great time.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's nice that my first playthrough I did not stream. I just did it for myself. And because that's what I did with the very first game, like because I had it before this channel and I won. I know that first time you play the game, you can't get that first feeling, those first feelings, those first experiences back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I really wanted it to just be something that I, just for the pure love of the story and the game, I wanted to just have that for myself. And I know some people say that's kind of selfish or whatever, but
No.
for me, it's really not. I know I do so much content from the community, anyways. To be able to have that story just for my own digestion and for my own observance the first time, it's really it's gonna sound really hokey, but it's kind of like a sacred or special thing, you know?
No, it is.
Yeah, so I really just wanted to have that experience on my own. I didn't want to have to worry about chats and, oh, is the stream dying? Like, what's going on? Is my my mic muted? I didn't want to worry about it. I just wanted to just the game and me, and that's it. And so
Yeah, Strats, we waited so long for this game that means so much to us. You absolutely take that time for yourself. It's not being selfish at all, and it's only selfish of somebody to expect you to share that intimate time with them.
Exactly.
Rock on.
And yeah, like Jasper, as you spoke about the spoilers and stuff, yeah, I put so many filters and stuff in to try to avoid any spoilers, and so that was the other thing I was very cognizant about, not being spoiled. And so that was the other reason why I didn't want to get spoiled, you know, in my very first playthrough. So yeah, that's a couple more questions. 10 feet says, very great analysis and dissection of different aspects of Jackson and its inhabitants. I really think Abby and Ellie will cross paths again, but in what circumstance would you find most impactful? Yeah, in my part 3 idea that I put forward, I have Abby helping, like kind of like getting the Fireflies and helping the people of Jackson to fight both the new factions that are vying for Ellie, as well as, you know, the unstoppable horde of infected. And I kind of like referenced this hero's journey kind of theme with other movies and stories, like the Lord of the Rings. In the Lord of the Rings, you know, Frodo and Sam go on the individual journey. That would be Ellie going on this individual journey, you know, to deal with her immunity and vaccine thing, while this humanity, this kind of like concept of humanity, like the idealism of humanity, fights this, you know, unstoppable horde. In the Lord of the Rings, you know, it's like the humans fighting these orcs and all that kind of thing, and it looks like at the last moment they're not going to make it, but then, you know, you have kind of like this savior moment, right? And so that's how I kind of see it. And it's in Harry Potter as well, you know, like it seems like all is lost, you know. Was it the Dark Night of the Soul, right? Yeah, and then you have this kind of like
the Dark Night of the Soul.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think for me, I kind of pitched what the story I would tell for part 3 would definitely have Abby and Ellie crossing paths inadvertently, running into each other, and there being like this tense moment, you know, but they kind of unite over this common threat that they're sharing. So in many ways, it's kind of similar, but just in a different context of what you were talking about, Strats.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so all those part 3 questions, you guys can see both Wolf and I did a whole stream about the hero's journey in The Last of Us Part 3.
Yes.
If you look on my channel, you should be able to find it very easily. If you go under The Last of Us Part 2 or the live streams, you'll see it. Yeah, it's called like The Last of Us Part 2 and 3, the hero's journey. And we talk about all this stuff, and we talk about all our ideas on Part 3. So well worth a watch if you haven't.
100%.
Yeah, let's see. Oda Humanity. How do we feel about the interactions Jackson had with outsiders prior to this story, and do we believe it will be after? Good question. Very, very good question. What do you think, Wolf? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I was distracted by barking dogs.
Oh, no worries. It was
not have them barking onto the stream.
Yeah, no. It was the interactions of Jackson with outsiders prior to the story and how it'll affect it after. Like how Jackson progresses from here on, you know.
Well, from part 2, I'm not really seeing there being much of a catalyst for immediate change and Jackson to change. Oh, well, I guess there is, you know, because of what happened to Joel, though that happened I guess that is a good point, that they were trying to help, stragglers like they do, and it ended up being a trap. So, man, that is a very, very good question. Yeah, that definitely stands. Look at all those flowers at Joel's house. So yeah, I think it would be naive to think that there wouldn't be some type of change to how they treat outsiders for sure.
This is part of what also like leads me to maybe a decline. I don't want to say downfall. I mean, or like a temporary downfall of Jackson is they lost a lot of leaders. I mean, like
Oh.
Tommy, Joel, Ellie,
Mhm.
Jesse, like all these great leaders in their community are all gone, either dead or
Yes.
ostracized or on the outskirts, right? And so, yeah, I think there is like an identity crisis of Jackson, maybe
That's a good point.
That might
That's
lead
a valid
to.
point.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Thank you. Yeah, and I know Jasper, you kind of talked about it a little bit. How you saw, you kind of said the same thing. You see Jackson kind of facing difficulties going forward.
Yeah, I can totally see, a story there to happen. And with every great story, there has to be conflict. So I imagine in part 3, it's their life after everything happens. I can't just see it, seeing, the track history of Naughty Dog and their stories. I can't see it just being peace. There has to be some sort of animosity. And I think whatever,
oh, look at that.
Elliot has done in Santa Barbara, there's probably going to be some sort of conflict between either Rattlers or some other factions to come and see, what Jackson is, because, Abby originally remember, I believe Abby was looking over Jackson at one point, right when she went to go find Joel.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That was Jackson, correct?
Yeah, and she says like it's a fucking city. Like she's like really amazed.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So for her to be able to find Jackson like that, I'm sure other factions are going to be able to find Jackson too, and I think there is going to be some sort of conflict there that will happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the word out is that Ellie is the immune one. So that could definitely play into the future as well, because the two big questions is Ellie's immunity and the future fate of humanity. That's the two questions that have to be answered in part 3. Thank you, Fire Girl. Thank you for the love and euros. You're too kind. I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for your continued support. You're amazing. And I know you support all 3 of us. Fire Girl's everywhere in this community.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, she was. I think Jesse probably one of your first, or Jasper, one of your very first people who had showed up in your streams.
Yep. Yeah. I know Fire Girl.
Yep.
I know she's known for her mollies too.
Yep.
Clearly in factions.
For those who don't know, Jasper also has been playing factions, and I noticed you're up to like week 17 now.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah, you've been putting some work in, and you've improved so much just in like a couple of weeks. Yeah, it's really impressive, Jasper.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not getting as ragdolled anymore. I'm still holding my own now in pubs, and it's been a lot of fun.
I enjoyed watching you Robin Hood quite a few people the other night with the bow and arrow. I was like, man, I gotta take notes here. Yeah, great.
I love it. I'm so obsessed with that game right now.
It can be yeah. I don't think I really need to speak to that too much. I made a whole channel that was kind of like promoting it for 3 years. So. I'm pretty much obsessed with it as well. AP said Ellie and Abby joining forces is a hard pill to swallow. I don't think that will work. I think it could totally work because it's one of those situations, and you see this in a lot of stories where you have two opposing forces, mortal enemies, but then you have this outside entity that all of a sudden like, hey, this is the priority. Like our disagreements are suddenly just seem like child's play compared to this other thing, which could be an unstoppable horde that is just literally going to take out all of them. So that's
and also they even if they don't like each other and they're not their favorite people in the world for obvious reasons, they really did crush their beef. I mean, they both let each other go. And Ellie kind of saved her life and Lev's life, even if she wanted to kill him immediately afterwards. But and the other thing that I always like to say is it's not about what happens. It's about how it happens. So sure, Ellie and Abby teaming up can be done quite poorly, and to leave us with the impression, see, that was never going to work. But it
Mhm.
can also be done very well to where we're like, we buy it. It's organic to us. Like, okay, we can get behind this because of the writing and the performances and the situation.
Absolutely.
Like Strength to talk about.
Right, and we could also see, the dynamic between Tommy and Ellie, because if they were to team up, Tommy's not going to be obviously cool with that either.
No.
Yep.
So there can be some, dialogue there that can happen. We brushed under the rug, or do they have to still have conflict between each other?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mad Matt said, "Why would they leave Jackson? Where would hundreds of those people go? That's a better place. Jackson has water, electricity, security, food." It did when we left, but that doesn't mean that attacking forces or an unstoppable horde wouldn't change that. And that's what I'm saying. There's cracks. There's cracks in the dam. for a metaphor of Jackson.
Yeah,
It may
that's
just
true.
be a trickle at first, but then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
boom, and
Yeah.
and I really kind of imagined that happening in part 2, and it didn't.
Okay.
They kind of like edited the trailers, so like it shows Jackson, and then it shows like this burning building, and you think Jackson is burning to the ground, right? They kind of like
Mhm.
wanted you to think that, and it didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that won't happen in part 3. That Elysium falls, so to speak.
Sure.
Joystick Pepsi, do you think Joel will show up for a brief flashback, or do you think he won't be in part 3 at all? I think he could definitely show up in flashbacks. Absolutely, I think he
100%.
would. I love the idea of flashbacks and time jumping. It's something
Me
that
too.
I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, that I really saw it happening, because they did mention that there would be in jumping from one scene in time to another, and how would you do that? And some people say that Joel's not in part 2 at all, and he really is. He's so much
Yes.
of it. It's just that it's spread out. It's like, yes, he dies early in it. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't played it, but you probably wouldn't make it this far in this conversation if you hadn't.
No.
So I don't feel bad about that. But yeah, he's out. He's throughout the entire game, and yes, and I kind of like that it is flashbacks, because you
Me
get
too.
these great tender moments that you really could not have in the thick of this like revenge kind of cycle, or this crazy chaos that's happening. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it really needed to happen that way. Like the
And-
birthday chapter at the museum, the science and
Yes.
natural history museum. Beautiful chapter, beautiful level and chapter. So good.
I would be shocked if part 3 comes out and it's about these characters and there not be Troy Baker in it, there not be Joel in it. I would be shocked to not have multiple flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly at least one. It would shock me.
Yeah, I mean,
they
just one that comes to mind immediately is Joel and Tommy flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tommy kind of like coming to terms with his brother's loss, right?
Yeah.
And that can be done in a flashback, and kind of seeing how he's been able to maybe eventually move on or not move on from that. Absolutely. And then this also gets into like the whole HBO series a bit, of them being able to extrapolate on this story so much more. Is
Yeah.
Anna. We know so little about Ellie's mom, Anna, right? We don't know anything
Yeah.
about Ellie's father. Not even mentioned, not even once, not even alluded to ever.
No.
Yes, which is an important point to bring up. But yeah, but the idea of like Anna and early on Joel and Tommy as hunters, there's a lot of different areas that they could really expand. And it doesn't mean that they can't do that in part 3 as well. It's definitely something they could do.
You know who I hope they cast as Anna?
Yeah, please say it again. Please say it again. I think it's
Ashley Johnson.
That would
as Ellie's mother would be so appropriate.
It would
just be amazing.
In my mind, I don't think they can do anyone else at this point. I
Yeah.
really don't. I don't think they can do anyone. It has to be
Yeah.
her.
It has to
her.
be Ashley.
What a beautiful nod it would be.
Yes.
What a beautiful nod. Because in a certain way, she really is the mother of Ellie. She brought Ellie to life. So,
Dude, the double entendre of that, the metaphor of her being the mother of Ellie would just be chef's kiss.
Yes, they got to do it. You got to do it, Neil.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Make it happen.
Let's see. Yep. Do you guys think Dina can forgive Ellie and take her back?
No.
I don't think she can. I think that ship has sailed. I really do. And I think it would be maybe a discredit to the game a bit if it was just like, yeah, no worries. I know you totally screwed me over and left me to die, but yeah, no problem. You went on your revenge mission, but you're back now. Hey, you're missing a couple fingers. Oh well. Let's see. More Anna would be hype. Yeah, I know. It's a big question, you know. And some people have really interesting theories about Anna and Ellie's or origins, so to speak, that she was like a Firefly experiment. There's that idea, which I know gets a little sci-fi-ish, but
it's still interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. Do you think Ellie's mother is the prophet of the Seraphites? 10 feet. I don't. I don't think she is. I did have a crazy theory though before the game came out a long time ago that that the Seraphites, like one of the Seraphite leaders, ended up being Joel, like that Joel left Jackson at the very beginning, and kind of was going crazy, and ends up in Seattle and creates a cult based on his daughter called the Seraphites.
Oh wow!
Because her name's Sarah, you know. It's like but that was just crazy. It obviously wasn't it at all. But I liked the idea of Joel like just becoming obsessed with the loss of his daughter and taking it to a very unhealthy level. Which
crazy theories are fun.
Yeah, they are. They are. Remember when everyone thought Abby was Anna?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was one of those people.
Yeah, I was on the fence of that because of the trees in that trailer. I knew that it wasn't in Seattle. I knew that it wasn't like a prequel, like it wasn't before, because the trees on the freeway were so huge. It had to be after, is what my thing was. You know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually thought it could be Ellie's sister. I really did think that it could be her sister. It seemed like they could have been related. I mean, Abby really could be.
She could.
We know Anna was with the Fireflies, right? And we know that we don't know anything about Abby's mother. Abby and Ellie could share the same mother. Different fathers, but same mother could be. I don't know.
Because we don't know anything about that parent from both sides.
We don't. Yep. So there's something to chew on. Crazy thoughts, crazy ideas. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's almost 8:00. Any final questions? Let's do some final questions here, and then we will wrap it up for today.
Abdelghani asks, "Do you think there will be an Abby DLC?" I hope there is. I would play the heck out of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping for any DLC, whether it's Abby, Bill, Joel and Tommy, Lev and Abby. Yeah, I'd be up for any of it.
Fleshing out the dance that you mentioned, the dance that's unfinished.
Yes. Yeah, that dancing would be amazing. It really would. That would be good. Yeah, and we should also talk about what factions should we cover next. I mean, I certainly have my favorites, but
yes.
Wolf. Jasper, what faction would you like to see covered next? So Wolf and I are doing these live streams, and every month we cover a different faction. The first one was the Rattlers. This one's Jackson. We still have Seraphites, WLF, and we can even go into like Fedra, is an interesting one that covers both games.
I mean, I would love to see Seraphites for sure. Maybe I'd be interested because they're an interesting group. I would love to see that faction covered.
That is my favorite. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about the Seraphite one. I really am. Like, this is gonna sound crazy, but I almost want to get like a theologian or someone who studies like religions and cults. I want to get someone to help us break down what's going on here, because there's a lot there, and that little quip I put, like Neil said it, like there was so much more of the Seraphites that they cut, like when Ellie visited that island. And I just know when I play that level with Abby, you can just see there's so much more going on there. There really
Yes.
is. And again, speaking of DLC, I really think that could be part of the DLC as well, or whether they incorporate it into the multiplayer. It could definitely be part of that as well. But there's a lot going on there, and I really wish that somewhere along the lines, like when Lev mentions, "Oh, have you read her reading or her writings? You know about the Seraphite leader, the person who started, they call it a cult or started the religion or whatever you want to call it, movement."
Sure.
I wish they had one of those books like that you found, and then you could flip through it. I want that so bad. I want to like see what all the Seraphite readings and lore and ideology is. I really do. I want all the details of that because I find it really fascinating. It's a group that I feel they could have gone, and I think they wanted to, but they just weren't able to in order to keep it going. But yeah, so
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we're in agreement. Maybe the Seraphites are next. And speaking of which, so this song that is playing right now is called "Feels Like Home." It's by Created Nor Destroyed. Jesse, who is a member here, he also plays Factions. He plays Factions with us on Sunday. Jesse's an incredibly talented individual, and he is a musician, and he made this song specifically for this Jackson chapter. And he actually has already made a song for the Seraphites. That was one of the first ones that he did when I kind of mentioned this idea, and the song is so good. I love it. He really, I can't wait to share that song with you guys next month, it sounds like, when we do this. He literally took the pitch of the Seraphite whistles and incorporated it into the song.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
he
so
out
cool.
and the vibe of it is so Seraphites. It's both like haunting and beautiful at the same time. The
Sounds like a
the
lot.
song is called "May She Guide Us." It's so good. It's so good. So
Wow.
huge shout
Can't
out
wait to hear it.
yeah, huge shout out to Jesse. He is such a thoughtful guy. He has helped donate his talents to help our community and help my streams and each of you enjoy this just that much more. So thank you, Jesse, once again, and can't wait to share that with all of you. Yeah, any final thoughts or any final questions? What do you guys think? Or Wolf or Jasper, anything you guys would like to share? I've been posting your guys' social media and channel links, by the way, during this, so people can check you guys out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, and please do, if you guys have not checked out Wolf and Jesse, they are both on both YouTube and Twitch. They stream often, and you should definitely pop in and check them out. They are great contributors to our community, and the least I can do is help share the love and send some strategists your guys' ways.
We
So,
definitely feel the love, bro.
awesome.
Definitely.
Awesome. So any final words, you guys? Or any last questions? Now's the time.
I can't wait for Factions 2 to come out.
I know.
Same.
I hear you.
Whatever it is they're working on, I'm ready for it.
Please let there be a reverse shiv.
Oh, that would be so awesome. That would be so cool. Can you imagine if you reached behind you to grab their hand and then you twisted their arm and then you stabbed them in the stomach?
Oh my
Yeah.
How cool would that be? Naomi was like,
That'd
no.
be such a cool animation. Like, please,
Yes.
please. Because I'm just like, feel so helpless when I get shivved in Factions.
That would be cool. That would be so cool. I would love a reverse shiv. I should send a message to Anthony Newman and Ed Pereira, some like the programmers, make this happen.
Yeah.
That's so cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We are going to end
Thank
this.
you for having me.
Absolutely, Jasper. Thank you once again. And thank you, everyone in chat. Thank you for your patience and your wonderful questions and taking the time to spend with us this morning. It was a wonderful, wonderful discussion, and I can't wait till next month. We'll talk about the Seraphites. Seraphites of Seattle, a beautiful and haunting group that I think we can go into very good depth with. Absolutely. All
Hell
right.
yeah.
Hell yeah. That's right. And with that having been said, thank you all so very much, and I wish you well. Have a fantastic rest of your day. All right. Cheers.